But that's another thing that like it just is so strange when you put yourself out there publicly, how quickly people are ready to paint you with this or that. And this whole dialogue over division, to me, it's having a conversation. I enjoy conversations. I don't understand how we've gotten here, and I don't have the time to respond to every post or commentary you make. That's not the place to have an actual conversation. I don't very often have back and forths with people because I don't find that's productive. I'm more prepared to have a conversation like adults. Like, I don't know why things have become so short and, labeled instead of let's just have a conversation like people used to do once upon a time.
Sometimes people in these conversations, they're actually having a conversation with what they think you believe rather than actually addressing what you believe outright. And that's where I'm always curious to, if somebody uses a term, well, we got to define that term. We got to agree that we're actually talking about the same thing. If not, sometimes you can be talking past each other. You could be missing the mark just because you haven't actually decided that you're focused on the same thing. And then you mentioned that you're labeled alt-right or right-wing just because now you've kind of helped defend some citizens for their rights who are not on the left now. What happens is people subscribe a whole other subset of beliefs onto these labels. This middle ground is something where if you ask a lot of people, the average person's somewhere in the middle on like a lot of issues. I feel like there's a little bit more commonality than there are differences. And you see this, if you talk about immigration, just as one little example, most people think that there should be a limit because if you ask people, well, in Canada, should we have 10 million people move in 2025? People say, well, that's too much. So all we're disagreeing with right now is where should the limit be rather than like, because everybody has a limit. It's just we're disagreeing about the exact number of it. And often these things get framed in black and white terms, and we need more of that nuance and kind of this shared understanding.
Well, I think that's such a great example too. And it's not, for me at least, it's not just the amount of people, because I don't think I have enough information to even comment on that. What it is, I think, is how it affects people. And for me, everything I do, and don't get me wrong, some of the clients that I have, I very much believe in the ideology as well, but it's all about holding the government to account. So if we have the information about, okay, we're going to bring in X many immigrants, wonderful, great. Like, I understand Canada was built on immigrants as well, with immigrants. But they need the facilities to live as well. So let's just ensure that we're doing this responsibly. And then let's have a conversation about how many people are. But first and foremost, perhaps elected officials, you should be listening and talking to the citizens that are already here and what their concerns are, what their issues are, what their fears are. Let's just talk about them. And that's where I think that this is what's causing a bit of the gap and the lack of trust in our public and institutions. Is I've been seeing more so recently, elected officials are talking at us rather than with us or to us. They're just saying, this is what we're doing, the end. And not even sometimes saying why, which would be helpful and would be nice. But ideally, it would be, what are your thoughts on this? And wow, I think that would transform things. I think that would start getting people more civically engaged. That would also start building trust and repairing that bridge that we have that's quite open right now. And then I wonder whether it's sometimes done on purpose or not. So maybe they just like doing their work, over there and not bothering. But I think it's also on us to get involved.
Yeah, it makes me... Yeah, the way that I think we've talked about this on our show before, where it almost feels sometimes like maybe, if you want to say that there's a government media apparatus of some type that kind of maybe focuses and keeps, pretty tight control of the messaging. It almost feels like they don't want us to discuss these types of things because this is giving them the benefit of the doubt, that they don't want the conversation to go off the rails and be like, if you start talking about limiting immigration, then before you know it, people will be talking about, they'll be saying racist things about, Muslim immigrants or something. Like they go way too far the other way, as if you couldn't have any nuanced discussion in the middle there that has nothing to do with either race or religion or anything like that, but is surely but is simply a practical conversation on the sheer number.
Right. 100%. And I like that you brought up the media and how it's kind of captured, or worse. And, with everything that's occurred over the last 4 years that has been highlighted with the problems, I think it's also great. I'm a forever optimist, or however you say it, because I also see that it's caused a lot of people to do things that they probably wouldn't have. For example, me doing this podcast, yourselves doing yours. And I think that's good. And I think that's healthy and helpful. So it really exposes things as well. And I think just today, the CBC had, or somebody reported that the CBC had like the worst viewership it ever had in a long time, with the $1.5 billion and the amount of content creators that they have there. So that goes to show you the power that we have all the time if we're willing to take some ownership.